Welcome to the world's stickiest learning. I'm Darren Smith, and more importantly, we've got Yogesh Gandhi here. How are you?
I'm very good, and thank you for having me with you today.
Hey, the pleasure's mine. The pleasure's mine. We're talking all about the Oscar coaching cards that you created, and here's one I prepared earlier.
Mm.
We'll come back to that.
And here too.
And that's a fabulous background. Absolutely fabulous. So, first thing to say is a big thank you for creating it. We're going to ask you some really simple but hopefully insightful questions around what are these things that you created, these coaching cards, Oscar coaching cards, how do they work, how do they benefit people, and why did you do it? But let's go right back to the start and begin with a really nice question around why should we listen to you when we talk about Oscar coaching? I know we should, but please tell the viewers out there.
I think whether you choose to listen to me or not, I think you should definitely choose to listen with the intent of knowing why is coaching so important in today's world. And I look at coaching as an essential life skill that managers must have, leaders must have. And I also look at coaching as an essential service. Everybody should be making accessible for themselves. So look at it as, if you've not been feeling well, thinking about going to a GP is a bit of a no-brainer. And nowadays, in the world of complexity, vulnerability, all of that we're living in, it's essential that all of us take benefit of coaching. And I've been coaching since 2019, and I've seen how dramatically it has impacted and changed people's lives, people who've benefited from some of those things. And I myself, apart from being a coach, I'm also a coachee to somebody, and I've seen how it has changed me. And I feel the change that has come about in me in last 5 years has been bigger than what I've been able to imagine for any of the previous years. And that only happened because somebody said, would you like to be part of the coaching community? And I said, well, why not? Well, for once I was thankful that I didn't overthink that opportunity, and I said yes. And I'm really, really glad that I did. And I feel that's a skill that leaders and managers must be able to demonstrate more and more in today's world. Google's Project Oxygen has clearly outlined that it's one of the most crucial skills, yet it's also one of the most underdeveloped ones. What it means is, as leaders and managers, if you're not using coaching, you're not making the most of the potential that lies within the individuals in your team, as well as your wider teams and functions as well.
Very true, very true. I'm also a coach and a coachee. And some of the best conversations are those ones where my coach asks me a question and you sort of do this and this, and you think, that's a great question. That's really got me squirming. That's the question I didn't want you to ask. Love that, love that. All right, let's ask you about the product. So
Yeah.
you created these coaching cards. Would you tell us a bit about this product and why you chose Oscar?
Yeah. So one quick thing about the Oscar model, and most people are familiar with slightly better known model called as Grow, which was invented by John Whitmore. Um, Oscar actually builds on top of that model and brings in the critical review stage. And I feel where Oscar really differentiates from Grow is its ability to bring on board continuous learning, continuous evolution, and continuous adaptation that's necessary for us to remain as lifelong learners. And
Okay.
what it also does is um, moves away the focus from problem oriented situations to a much more solution oriented approach, much more strengths oriented approach, which means you are invoking all the positive things within your coachee as they go on the journey of transformation and the journey of change. Now, that's the reason why I chose to go with Oscar, because it unpacks a lot more potential. The other
Mhm.
thing that happens with Oscar is you bring in an element of review, which is necessary for a coach and coachee to remain in rapport. So you come from one coaching session to another coaching session, and if you're always looking at very different disjointed goals, right, then you don't have much of a common sort of a platform to connect on. However, if you're really working on something groundbreaking, something long term, then the R of the Oscar model allows you to sort of, start off from where you left in the previous conversation. So it gives you an easy opportunity to latch on to. And then, it also means that as a coachee, the feeling you have is my coach gets me. He
Yeah.
remembers what we discussed the last time around. And so, there is an element of holding somebody to account through what you agreed you will do. And we are now reviewing what was done, what was the outcome of it, what did you learn, etc. So you move from one coaching conversation to another coaching conversation in much more seamless way, in much more connected way. And so that means the engagement is much more longer term, but it is much more rapport based, much more trust based, etc. And that's why I chose Oscar coaching model over some of the other ones.
So it's almost Rosca. Oscar. Okay, I'm going to patent that. So we got the review right through and then the review again. It lines up in a chain. I get that. And I've never heard before a comparison between Grow and Oscar. You're talking about there's more review. I get that. It's more solution orientated than problem orientated and more about potential.
Yes,
Okay.
100%.
Okay.
So what you're
Fabulous.
essentially looking at is you're trying to invoke all the positives that you have in front of the coachee, because imagine if I'm continuously talking to you about your current environment, your current reality, your current obstacles, your current problems. After a while, it becomes exhausting for the human mind. As against, if I change my approach and say, so what can we do about it? When have you done this before that yielded success?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
What are some of the strengths that you could bring into this situation? When was the last time you did this and you were really good at that? What do other people see in you and recognize you for? The moment I start tapping into the positives that the person brings in, right, the coach is a bit more engaged. And there's another wonderful thing that's happening. It's already encouraging the coachee to look at the situation with much more positive mindset and much more, I can do this because in some ways I've done this in the past, which means there are ready references for success you could borrow from that can propel you to take that really important
Yeah.
action and move you forward on your journey of achieving your goals.
Love it, love it. All right, let's get into the product. We've got a lovely picture of you
Yeah.
here. Fabulous, fabulous. We've got 80 coaching cards, so I'm just going to pull these out of the box and then ask you to talk through what's here.
Yeah.
So let's start. So we've got these cards. So what's this I'm holding?
So essentially, these are a set of 80 different cards with a few cards thrown in between that are great for instructions and good things to remember, etc. So 80 cards correspond to the 5 different stages of the Oscar model, starting with objectives, the situation, the options, the choices and consequences, actions, and review. So OSCAR. In each of these stages, you'll see 16 questions each. Now, does it mean you need to ask all the 16 questions? Not really. Sometimes you'll get answer through asking one question if you asked it really well, knowing the context in which you're asking, or you could ask 2 or 3 to further clarify. Essentially, what this does is these cards are a great tool set for people who not be fully trained to become a coach. So for instance, you're a line manager and there are a number of different things you're doing,
Yep.
but these cards will give you a ready model for you to kind of, pick up a few questions, practice your coaching skills, and the more you use the cards, the better you become on using them. And the other thing is when you have something really handy to kind of work with, you don't have the anxiety of knowing, oh, what's the next question I should be asking? Because as a coach, that's one of the biggest mistakes you could make is while the coach is speaking, you're already thinking of what's the next question I need to ask. Now, these cards will take away that pressure from you, which means when you're coaching somebody, you could actually be fully present, taking in the information that your coach is sharing, and then your follow-up questions could be based on further inquiry, going a bit more deeper, etc. And then you seamlessly move from one stage to another, which means at every stage of the model, you are working through clear outcomes that you've now received thanks to some clever questions that have been already designed for you, and you kind of reach that final stage of completing the review, etc. And the outcome of the session is a lot more engaging, a lot more productive, and something that coachee can take away and say, you know what, I think that was a really great conversation.
I love that. You're absolutely right about a coach being present for the person. And it is distracting if you're thinking of that next question because you're not present. You're absolutely right. So we've got the 5 stages of Oscar, which we've talked about. This is just a card saying first stage, which is outcome. And then it goes into the first questions, which I'm going to grab here. So the first question in here, they're numbered, but as you say, you haven't got to ask all 80 questions. Wow, you'd be there forever. So the first question in the stage of O is this one. So
Yeah.
why did you write, I'm not going to ask you that for all these questions, but why this particular question did you think that would be useful?
Yeah, so imagine, a coachee comes to you and, you obviously go through those moments of, where you're just checking in well-being and all of that with each other. And then, you start speaking about something. Soon enough, you might recognize that, the conversations is really going in different directions, right? That first question really grounds you in terms of why are we seeing each other today, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
what you want to get out of this session. So lots of times, imagine if somebody's come to you and they are kind of all over the place and they're really feeling it, right? A question like this allows you to understand whether they want the coach today to just be with them and hear what they have to share, or they actually want to kind of make a progress in relation to what they've brought to the table. So, you come here and, you're really emotional about something. Do you want the coach to just be there with you and listen to you? Are you in the mood today for us to go through the solutioning phase at all? And in some cases, the coachee will tell you as to, what do they want out of this session. And that question is a great reminder to kind of, start from that place, which is, I'm here, right? But I'm here to do a job for you.
Yeah.
And my job is to ensure we make progress towards that. So that first question about the objective there. What do you want to get out of the session today? Right? We're not talking about what do you want to achieve? What do you want to
Yes.
get in relation to the goal?
Yes, I get that. I perfectly get that. And sometimes, certainly as a coachee, I think I've said to my coach a couple of times in the last few years, I'm just not up for it today. I'm
Yeah.
just not. And that's okay. I'm not either in the mood for it. I've got too much going on. I'm just going to roll through this. I don't want to roll through it. I want it to be useful for us both. So I think it's perfectly good to say, hey, today's not my day.
Yeah.
Um, I'm going to ask you to pick a stage, and then I'm going to pick a card, and we're going to show that question. What stage would you like me to pick? Hopefully, I can find it.
But let's go for choices.
Okay. Right. So,
Why I like this stage before we get into the detail of questions, etc., is because when we're talking about choices, we're not just talking about what are the different options you could be doing in relation to your goal. So if I were to compare it with grow, we are talking about option stage of the grow model, right?
yeah.
Options is, well, I could go this path, this path, this path, etc. But with choices, what we're trying to also do in this model is we're also trying to recognize the consequences of picking up the choices, right? So often in life, when you say yes to something, essentially you're saying no to something else. So
Correct.
you are
Correct.
basically invoking a deeper sense of inquiry here. So if you choose to do something, what outcome are you anticipating out of it, right? So we're also looking at consequences, the impact, not just on what it might change for you, but we're probably also looking at what it might change in relation to other people who might be involved in that ecosystem, right? Or the environment that you could possibly affect with the choices. And so in this case, it basically goes into a much more deliberate stage of analysis, wherein you're looking at number of different options. You might probably then prioritize them, you may stack them.
Mhm.
You might say, of these options, maybe this looks like a low hanging fruit, or you might say, what, actually this is more important for me, but it's going to take XYZ amount of time and resources. I feel like that's the one that I want to make an investment of my time and effort in. So that much more considered approach to choices is what you get with this model.
Makes perfect sense. Perfect sense. So if I grab one of the questions at random from choices,
Yeah.
it's this one.
Yeah. And I think, this is a classic question, even for people who might be going for their interviews, etc. You're often asked, like, when was the last time you learned from a mistake, right?
Mm.
And this is what's really crucial, that in life, all of us go through situations wherein, some things we yield success. And then you'll also come across situations wherein things didn't go to plan. And I think, start of this conversation, we spoke about that lifelong learning approach, which is it's okay to make a mistake so long as we know what we learned from it. And I think, the coach is there to kind of ask those really important questions, so that you don't look as mistakes or errors as a failure. You look at them as, okay, this is how things can also go wrong, but these are the things I'm learning. So the next time I'm going to do something, these are the things I've learned from it. And I think, we all know that famous story about the invention of the bulb. I've invented 999 ways of how not to create it. So, which means that, ultimately it is about how long are you going to persist with something. When you make mistakes, what are you going to learn so that you can continue to grow better? And obviously, also from the basketball legend, we've heard the same thing. For every shot that you've seen me hit the target, there've been numbers which I've missed in practice, etc. So, is that kind of a mindset.
I love those. Was it Michael Jordan who said it took
Indeed.
me 19 years to become an overnight success? Was it him? Brilliant.
Indeed. Yeah.
Love that. Love that. 19 years to be overnight success. All right. Fabulous. Any last thoughts on the what? What is this product before I talk about how we use it?
Yeah, I think, as I said, the product is basically a ready reckoner for you to use, as a manager, as a leader, and something that you could use on your own as well, just in case if you don't have an access to a coach. So, something that can really help you to think in a structured way. So you can go from this is what I want to achieve to this is what I've done about it, and these are the results I've gotten. And so this is what I learned. And you kind of, go through that iterative process of doing things, learning, and becoming better. So in a sense, it's a coaching model. It's a tool that allows you to continuously achieve, learn, and repeat that on a loop, so that you're not limited by achieving a success in a project once, but this becomes a repeatable process wherein you continue to succeed and you continue to get better.
Nice. Like that. So we've got our 80 coaching questions that you've written in 5 stages. Could you paint a picture for us of how do we use it? You've mentioned self-coaching, one-to-one with a line manager, maybe even with a team. But in practicality, what does that look like when I'm at the office? I've got emails and phone calls and blah, blah, blah. How do I use it?
I think first and foremost is, are you willing to take time out and actually, take yourselves out of the situation wherein you're completely, bombarded with number of distractions, be it the colleagues who are talking around you, be it the emails, be it the pings on your phone, so on and so forth. This is an opportunity for you to say, you know what, I'm going to think about a goal that I want to achieve in a way that is structured and focused, and you actually extricate yourselves from those distractions and find yourselves a time. And then if you're, let's say, imagine yourself sitting in front of a coach or a manager, or maybe somebody who's there for you as your accountability partner, right? And they've got this stack of cards in front of you, right? You could pull out a card, and just as you showed one of those first cards to me as to what do you want to get out of this session today, right? On the objective side, further inquiry on objectives would look like, what goal are you looking to achieve,
Yeah.
right? And then you can also sort of go through that smart formula for really sort of refining that goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Once you've locked down on what is it that the coach is willing to achieve, then you go through the next stage, which is around understanding the situation of it. And so the situation oriented cards will allow you that deeper inquiry. So what's happening right now? What have you tried so far? What has worked well? What has not worked well, right? What have you learned from situations which have not worked well? Who are the other people who might be involved into this situation? So you
Sure.
get a better picture of that situation. Then you move to the choice part of it, which is, now you know this, right? So what are the different options that you have in front of you? What are the different choices? What are the different consequences, the pros, cons, the priorities, etc.? And then you're moving into the action stage, which is, now you've done all of that analysis. What
Yeah.
action you practically want to take, right? So you would say, this week I would do one, next week I might do something else, so on and so forth. And is the coachee who takes control of that in terms of deciding what they're going to do about the situation, right? And then the review stage is obviously about, so what has happened in terms of the actions, and what have you got as a result of it? What have you learned? What will you do differently, etc.? So that's how the model will look like in a typical conversation setting. So take any situation such as, I want to be more healthy, right? So when you say, I want to be more healthy, in what ways do you want to be more healthy?
Yep.
Is your, the O part of it, right? What are you currently doing about it? Is the situations part of it? What are the choices you have? So is it about exercising more? Is it about having control over your diet? Probably changes in the sleep schedule, probably finding a workout buddy, etc. So all the choices, and then you're looking at actions. So what do you think you could be doing next, right? And you say, you know what, I'm actually going to start with maybe, have a walk around the lunchtime, and I'm going to do that with my work buddy, and we'll probably do it for 25 minutes. One action. Review stage would be like, did you actually do that? How did
Yeah.
it go? What else could you have done, etc. Right? So you take any situation and give you a very simplistic example, but you could then apply it to your career situation, your relationship situation, your life goal situation, drag and drop, but the model will still give you something really tangible and something worth working upon.
And I'm guessing a question I hadn't thought of before until you sort of prompted it is, in a one-to-one session, I guess we could just do one stage. We haven't got to do all five, or we could do a couple.
And that's a great point, which is, should every conversation follow the model fully, right? Now, knowing a model is always useful. It's a bit like when you go to a doctor, right?
Mm.
They don't have to start with, oh, I've got a pain here, so let me put you on an operation, in the operation theater, right? I mean, there are stages. So you recognize the amount of time you have, you recognize what's most valuable for the person in that conversation. What the model does is it allows you that appreciative inquiry into that certain stage, so that even
Yeah.
if I have 7 minutes with you, and in those 7 minutes, what's the maximum value I can create? Because I'm now willing to ask you powerful questions, because I'm willing to invoke insight and discovery within you, right? And I'm listening deeply. So that means end of it, you'll walk away with something really tangible, or you'll walk away feeling better for actually talking to me. So sometimes you may not be able to go through all the stages, and that's absolutely fine. But
Yep.
this is about
Yep.
learning the art of having a great conversation that a model like Oscar can enable in you.
Fabulous, fabulous, perfect. Let's move on, if we may, to the why. If you were to share with us your wildest dreams about people using this, what are they getting out of it? Why are they using it? What could they create?
So many different things. And like I said, it's one of the things that everybody should have access to in terms of more like a life skill for
Yeah.
manager, right? I mean, it's an essential element of how you can do your job well. Often I like to tell people, if you take approach to managing as telling and teaching people how you've done it, you are limiting people's potential
Yeah.
to the success that you've been able to achieve.
Yeah.
However, if you turn it around and make it about the person in front of you,
Yeah.
their potential, their attitude, their aptitude can create results much beyond what you were able to do, which means as a manager, you get the benefit of getting the most out of people, because you're
Yeah.
changing your approach from telling to actually, getting the most out of your people. And so I feel that's the reason why people should be using tools like this. Now, what are the practical applications in which you can use? Imagine somebody not having enough confidence to speak on a stage, right? Imagine
Yep.
somebody not feeling confident delivering a big presentation. Imagine somebody struggling to actually find the next job or a next gig, or somebody struggling in their relationship, or somebody wants to achieve a goal like, maybe I want to run a marathon, but I've only run 5K so far, right? You take any of these different goals, the moment you are willing to sign up to say, you know what, I'm actually going to put my mind and think through that goal and what I want to do in a structured methodology. I'm willing to be accountable for the outcome, because when you talk to a coach or a friend or a manager, etc., essentially what you're doing is you're giving them the freedom to hold you to account. And I feel real magic starts happening there, because often when people try and do something by themselves own, often things remain as I wish,
Yeah.
right? Now, from I wish to I will is a massive difference. And when you actually use a tool like this, along with a person you trust, you're actually moving that wish to a will, which is from something that's uncertain to bringing certainty to it, so your outcome becomes more real and doesn't remain in your wish land.
Lovely. I'm going to ask you a slightly different last question, if I may. It's always confounded me that the sports world, every Olympian has a coach. Most business people don't. Why do we struggle to make the transition from sports to business coaching, sports coaching to business coaching? Why do you think that is? I don't know the answer.
And honestly, I do not know why that is, in the sense that I really feel most people should be looking at having a coach. And when people say I'm self-made, yes, you're self-made, but then your success is limited by your own worldview, which is not being challenged enough, which is not being guided enough. And once you have a coach, you're then willing to be challenged more, supported more, guided more, which means you can infinitely increase your possibilities as against trying to do it on your own. Again, in the sporting world, we think of coaches as people who've previously been there, done that, and so I can learn from them. But I think the real essence of coaching is I'm not looking at somebody who will tell me what to do, but somebody whom I will go to, and somebody who will be a source of listening, a source of wisdom, a source of confidence, a source of support, somebody who can also bring in tough love when it is needed. And that means that, most of us then can actually go on to achieve great things. And so I feel there is greatness lying within all of us. It's just that sometimes we do not want to be open enough and vulnerable enough to really tell the world that, look, this is what I want for myself. And that's why you see all people will have coaches because they need it, because they need to remain competitive. And most people, while they want to be that, they don't want to admit that, what, this is going to be a tough journey. And part of the reason why you must get a coach is because you say, what, I want great things in life, and hence I'm willing to make a great commitment, so that I can get what I wish to get.
You raise an excellent point, because I remember a picture I saw of Usain Bolt, who's probably looks like he's 7 feet tall, but anyway, he's a big guy. And then Glenn Mills, by his own words, is a short, fat bloke. And Glenn says, I can't run as quick as him. And Usain, in a wonderful Netflix documentary, points to Glenn and says, all that bloke does is ask me questions. Lovely. Love that. All my coach does is ask me questions. Fabulous.
And one of the other examples I've read only earlier this week is of a coach, who recognized that the player that he was coaching was different from others. And what every other coach would have done was to mold the player to play in a certain way. And this guy said, what, this person is successful because he does it in a certain way. And if I try and meddle too much around with it, he'll probably not be as successful. And so as a coach, you're also willing to then recognize that not every person sat across you is the same. So what works for one person may not work for another. And you need an experienced person to be able to recognize that, to understand that individuals are different because their circumstances are different, their skills are different, their attitude to life is different. And as a coach, you bring that non-judgmentalism on the table and say, what, I will allow you to be who you are because that is aligned to your potential, and we're working together to increase that and increase your likelihood of success.
When you talk like that, the image that's in my mind, I don't know whether it's an urban myth, but it's the image of the shark they put in a small tank and it only grew to this big rather than the size it could be. Yeah. It just seems to fit that perfectly. Wow. Yogesh, we're going to call you Yogesh Oscar Gandhi from now, because that was a wonderful insight into Oscar. I hadn't understood it like that. And I'm into coaching. So hopefully for the folks at home that are watching, they've got a brilliant insight into Oscar. I think they have. They've got an idea how they can use these, and maybe just start with one question and see what happens. Yeah. Have you got a final tip before we let you get back to work? Final tip for the guys.
I just say, I think, use the cards and see what it can create for you. It could be different things that different people want, but it's always worth trying. And often, when people say, I want to do this, and so I'm learning this, and etc., etc., often people are actually not taking actions. And I feel like, when you're looking at a model like Oscar, there is an essential element of action. It's not just so much about learning or talking to people or um, trying to bring about evidences of, I think I'm making progress on that. It is really about taking the actions. And if I were to leave one tip with people, it is act, and that gets you closer to what you wish. And it also kind of helps you move from a state of not much is happening to you actually see something is happening. And when something is happening, it gives you greater motivation to continue. And when you continue, you get closer and closer to your end goal.
I like that. Simple word, act. Yogesh, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for telling us about this product. Thank you for collaborating. Appreciate your time.
It's been a pleasure, Darren. Thank you so much.
Thank you.